After seeing the shocking scenes that came out of Gaza this morning, many people were left asking, what were the Palestinian factions trying to achieve by staging such a cruel event? Well, in this video, I'm going to attempt to explain what I believe the rationale is, and it's sinister. So make sure that you watch to the very end. But first, for anyone that doesn't have context, this is some of the more shocking footage from the killed hostage exchange this morning in Gaza. I simply don't have the words to describe the barbarism that we just witnessed. It's not bad enough that the Mujahideen kidnapped these innocent people from Israel, civilians, took them into Gaza where they were killed, but then to turn the exchange, the return of their bodies, to turn the return of their bodies to their loved ones into a celebration where thousands are dancing and cheering in front of their dead bodies, is just unbelievably cruel. And so I'm going to explain why I think they did this, because the reaction was universal. There was repulsion. With such universal outrage at what we witnessed, what was their strategy? Well, I think it all comes down to the current situation in Gaza. So in Gaza, there is unlivable conditions. Hundreds of thousands of people living out of tents, in shacks, without access to clean water. Society is broken. All the things that you and I take for granted are no longer there. And Hamas have to project power, and they have to project success. So that explains all the military uniforms. I mean, during the fighting, you'd never find Hamas in a military uniform, but now that they're celebrating the murder of Israeli civilians, now they're brave enough to wear their uniforms during a ceasefire. And they have to project this power. They have to show strength. They have to somehow convince their people that they haven't destroyed Gaza for nothing, that they can still cling on to power. And so the first thing they had to do is present this as a victory somehow. But how do you turn the murder of children, women, and the elderly into a victory? Well, it's the little details. First, you have to frame it that Israel is the aggressor. So all the imagery is conveying that it was Israel and not Hamas or the Mujahideen that killed the victims. No, it was Israel. So you see Netanyahu with fangs, and disgracefully the Bibas family and Oded are surrounded in blood, almost like they're sitting in his stomach. It's disgusting imagery. It's almost Nazi-like. And the Nazi imagery was there as well. It's talking about Nazi crimes, Nazi this project, portraying Israel as a Nazi on the banners. So anyone that's watching is forced to view Israel as the aggressor, when in reality, everybody knows that Hamas or the Mujahideen or one of the Palestinian factions or the people living in Gaza killed these innocent civilians. They kidnapped them and brought them back into Gaza. And so then what do they do next? Look at the coffins. What do you notice? Every coffin is the same size. Whenever the Palestinians bury their dead, if tragically a child has been killed, they make sure the world knows it's a child. I mean, this is a big part of their propaganda. But here you have 4 coffins of identical length, yet there are 2 tiny children, a baby in one of those coffins. And it's to present to the world that these were prisoners, and that's the adult prisoners almost, and that's even the language they use. If you look at this coffin here, it says that Shiri was arrested. She was kidnapped by terrorists. And it gets even more perverse with Shiri. Listen to this clip of one of the Mujahideen describing who she is.
Here I am speaking with one of the field commanders of the Mujahideen brigades, considering that this faction had detained and captured the Bibas family. You captured the Bibas family. What happened from the first moment to securing them and then their killing? Yes, this family was captured, or this female soldier was captured first, considering that she is a soldier working in the office of the commander of the southern district of the Gaza division.
She wasn't military, she was a teacher. She was a teacher. They kidnapped and murdered a teacher and had to present this as she was a prisoner that they'd arrested because of her connections to the military. It's all lies. But one of the biggest lies was actually when Israel finally received the casket and opened it. And by the way, it wasn't easy to get into the coffin because all of the coffins were locked, and cruelly, in some depraved act, Hamas sent the wrong keys with the coffins. Why would they do that? But when Israel did finally get into the coffin, it wasn't even Shiri's remains inside, which just leaves some horrible questions. Why wasn't her body inside? Why wasn't she with her children? And even more concerningly, what had they done to the body? These people are sick. They're monsters. And it's not just Hamas. A terrible framing of the Gaza conflict is that it's Israel versus Hamas. It's not Israel versus Hamas. First, I'd like to point out that almost every major Palestinian faction was present at this event. So at Eastern Voices was able to count 7 different factions that were present. In fact, carrying this coffin of Shiri Bibas, you can count the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, which is the Palestinian Authority, or Fatah's militant wing, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. This is not Hamas versus Israel. That's terrible framing. The overwhelming majority of Palestinians supported the October 7th attack, which is why when these bodies were taken out and paraded through Gaza, through Khan Yunis, thousands of civilians flocked the streets. They were smoking Nagila, they were jubilant, they were on rooftops. They brought their babies along, and with grins they looked at the coffins of dead babies while holding their own. What kind of a sociopath would take their own child to such an event? And there's a little detail, but it was pouring with rain, like torrential rain. I'm sitting in Israel. I didn't leave the house today because it was raining so heavily. But thousands of Gazans lined the streets to celebrate this event, this carnival of death. And when they finally finished with the parade, what they did next was just perverse. They got their children to stand on the stage where the coffins had started just minutes earlier and dance to celebratory music. It's just sick. What kind of a society produces this culture? And I think one clip from the event which just captures how sick Gazan society truly is this woman, this mother. Let me play it.
So Abdullah, are you and your father
mother
martyrs?
of 7 martyrs? I have given for the sake of God, and I am proud to be the mother of martyrs. I am proud that God loves us and has chosen from among us. I am proud that my children are accepted by our relatives, advancing and not retreating. Praise be to God, and we will for the sake of God. We adore the, mashallah, this great leader, Zaki al-Dardisi. Is this your son? Praise be to God. We thank God who loves us and chooses from us. Praise be to God. Oh God, who honored us by killing them all. We hope God will reunite us with them in His mercy. Oh God, accept them in the highest ranks. Oh God, make them among the prophets and martyrs.
Thank you very much. Abdullah, this is one of the attendees, and she is one of the mothers of martyrs. A mother of 7 martyrs, as she mentioned. This is one of her sons. In this picture, he is one of the members of the Al-Qassam brigades.
Did you catch that? She's effectively at an event which is parading dead Israeli children, and she goes to the cameraman and proudly boasts that 7 of her children were martyred, and then points to one of them, some Hamas thug. And this was the hardest thing for me to get my head round. She seemed happy. She seemed happy and proud that she'd raised 7 children who'd been killed fighting Israel. She basically raised her children to kill our children. And she's there at this event celebrating the deaths of both of our dead children. It's sick. What kind of a society produces fruits like this? I'll tell you what kind of a society. A one that's been governed by Hamas for almost 2 decades. A one that's been radicalizing itself for generation after generation, whipping itself into a genocidal frenzy. And this is now all under threat because Hamas launched this war and they invited destruction into Gaza. There are entire cities that have been razed to rubble because of their war. And now the people are impoverished, and Hamas risk losing it all. They risk losing power, and they're desperately trying to cling to it. And they need to show a united front to show that all of the Palestinian people are behind them, which is why you see all the factions represented at this handover. Because Hamas needs to show that the entire Palestinian people, or at least those living in Gaza, are united in their barbarism. But this projection of power won't work. Hamas miscalculated. They can't convince the world that those 4 people on that stage deserve to die, or that it was Israel's fault, or that they are somehow the good guys. You're literally standing over the coffins of babies, holding guns, wearing masks, kafirs, and trying to present yourself as the good guys. The world sees you for what you are. Evil, cruel baby killers. And we will not forget. All you have done is reminded the Israeli public just how evil and inhumane you are. And we will not allow you to ever carry out any attack like that on our people again. This was the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. And this is one of the most visceral reminders of that barbarism, that savagery. Hamas will not survive this. Mark my words. Am Yisrael Chai.